What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Walk the Talk. I am your host, Joshua J. Holland, and today we're going to get deep into somatic arts and what that even means. Today's guest is Mr. Dan Sykes. Dan Sykes is an entrepreneur, filmmaker, bodyworker, and founder of the Somatic Training Network, a company dedicated to learning and sharing somatic arts and practices from around the world. Dan built and runs the world's only world-class recording studio that is also a video production center and somatic arts training center, in which he records his fast-growing YouTube show, Emergency Fish Party. That's interesting. Dan has also just released his first book, Somatic Fanatic. Adventurous, authentic, and dynamic, Dan is a self-improvement fanatic, and he's passionate about helping people maximize their lives. Mr. Dan Sykes, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Thanks very much for having me. Excited to be here. This seems like a show right up my alley, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm happy you took the time to join me, and I was really thrilled about having you on, because a lot of times when I'm prepping for a guest to come onto the show, obviously I do a deep dive into as much as I can find out, so I can really guide a good conversation. And one of the first things that stood out was the fact that we both have martial arts as a part of our background. So I'm certain we'll get into that at some point. But I think first and foremost, just to kind of make sure that we don't lose anyone, let's explain what somatic training or somatic arts is all about.
Yeah, in naming the company, this was a big consideration of whether to use that word, because so few people don't know what somatic means. And in short, what it means is nervous system training, really at the heart of it. The reason most people don't know it is because this word is only used by a very few disciplines. It comes from the word soma. I believe that's Greek, not Latin, which means of the body. But what we use it to mean your experience of your body, and really feeling, kinesthetic, like physical feeling. And what my book is about, Somatic Fanatic, is my journey through a lot of different disciplines that all seem to have something in common. And everyone sort of sensed that there was something in common. And yet, as I went around from master to master to master, asking them, can you boil down your discipline into one sentence? And the answer was always no, there's no way to do that. And then I would ask them, well, what is the thing that links? It seems like yoga and this other one, they seem to have something in common. What is it? And no one could really answer that for me. And after many, many years of training, it suddenly dawned on me one morning that they're all training the nervous system. All these disciplines that I've come to represent at Somatic Training Network, that the reason most of them don't see themselves that way, and the general public doesn't think of yoga as training your nervous system, and qigong and tai chi and all these ancient arts, and there's many modern ones as well, is because most of these ancient arts which train the nervous system were developed thousands of years before we use this word nervous system. They use words like chi and chakras and many other things that actually now we know through neuroscience represent the nervous system. And they're all tapping in to our natural capacity to increase the function of our nervous system. And all these disciplines are based on these same two principles that we can talk about in a little while. But many, many disciplines actually train our nervous system. And my mission is to bring this simple idea of training your nervous system as part of nutrition, strength training, and nervous system training as what you can do actively to promote your wellness and keep healthy and vibrant through your life, or heal, whatever you have to do.
Beautiful. And so clearly, I mean, you can speak about this in a way that I think clearly displays that you've been doing this for a while, and obviously to come up with an entire system that trains that. It sounds like you have a very deep understanding. My question is what got you started down this path, to where you are now?
Well, like most people, pain is what got me down this path. In my case, it was emotional pain. I found myself about 12 years ago having sold a company and was well off financially, but young and in this sort of now what position. My wife at the time, my first wife, and I both were suddenly in this now what. We're fairly young at the beginning of middle age, and our answers were very, very different. And this was sort of the beginning of the end of 22 years of being together. Ultimately, we decided that we both wanted very different things, but we have 3 kids and this. And so between divorce and going back to filmmaking, which I had left behind to go into business with my first wife, I made a feature film, which is in this book, Somatic Fanatic, and it could not get distributed. It was 4 years of work of writing, producing, and directing my own feature. From a business standpoint, it was a complete non-starter. There was no distribution deal made for it, and my marriage was also falling apart simultaneously. So I was in this elongated emotional pain state. I had also been very non-physical my entire life. My whole life was sort of in my head and relying on my wits. Non-athletic. I was just a musician, filmmaking, business person, really having my hands be able to play music and having my wits be able to create things is what my whole life was about. I felt I was on the I was always overweight my whole life, felt very weak, felt very uncoordinated. And so finally, this fear of physical pain was what I wound up feeling in this sort of something has to give mindset. I was like, well, maybe I'm going to try to deal with that. And I had met, while making my feature film, we shot it in Russia, and I met these retired Russian Special Forces guys who practice what turns out to be a martial arts system, a military martial arts system, completely based on training the nervous system and getting it to very, very high levels of function and softening the soft tissue of these soldiers through all these various means, including this very, very brutal looking body work that I now receive and practice all the time, where they use sticks and other tools and drive tools into the flesh and use heavy whips and things to beat tension out of the flesh. And you train in breathing techniques and games of attention and movement to first overcome fear, to reduce panic, and then once you're through that kind of gateway, into ultimately feeling the body more and more and maintaining an ability to move sort of no matter what. And over time, your flesh softens down into around the bones, and you're able to feel and move and not go into panic at radical levels that are unimaginable. You come to see movement in waves and feel movement in waves instead of mechanically. And there's all kinds of transformations that take place. And when you meet these guys who really are masters at this in a combat sense, they can do things that just seem impossible because they're really controlling their internal muscles and manipulating mirror neurons by squeezing all their musculature. And then when they touch you, letting all their muscles go so your butt can let go for a second and you fall on the ground and don't understand why. And many things where they're masters at using sort of nervous system manipulation. And this is what got me through, was meeting those guys and deciding I wanted to finally confront my fear of physical pain. And I went into that from that, and that started leading me down this road to many disciplines and poking my head into and trying to get an understanding of, is this pain necessary? That's what led me to the next one. And then like in this world, every answer brings more questions. And I found myself over about 8 years going to several disciplines to try to get a handle on what is it that's happening here, and trying to understand what was this seemingly magical thing these Russians were doing that didn't feel magical. It felt natural, like when you hit a wave wrong at the beach and this nothing wave just knocks you like a truck backed into you. This is what was happening when these guys are barely touching me, and just wanting to know why. What is this going on led me actually to a lot of other disciplines. And then I finally realized, wow, they're training the nervous system at a very high level. And so are many other disciplines with different intents and different cultural, contributions and points of view. But really all of them are using two things. You can train your nervous system right now. There's only two things you have to do right now to train your nervous system. You must move in very slow motion. And when I say slow motion, just do an experiment while you're listening. Just raise one of your hands, either one, and very slowly if you raise your right hand, bring it to your left. Bring it across your face and back in slow motion. Or if you're the left hand, bring it to the right, toward your palm, and back again. In what you think is slow motion. Now, what I mean by slow motion is 25% of that speed. Half, and then half again. Very slow motion. And while you're moving your hand this time at 25% that speed, feel your shoulder. Feel your neck. Keep moving your hand. Feel your hands. Feel your bicep. Feel. You just did it. Whether you're doing Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, Kung Fu, Systema, Feldenkrais method, any of these, moving in very slow motion for the purpose of feeling it more. Introspection, we call it. Mm-hmm. This is what overwrites habit in your nervous system. Your nervous system must create habit of movement. All these various muscles moving in tandem with each other to move your arm. There's hundreds of thousands or millions of muscle cells being clenched and unclenched just to move your arm. The order all that clenching and unclenching happens in, or if the unclenching even happens. I mean, we'll get to that in a minute, because a lot of times with most of us, the unclenching is not happening. We'll talk about that later. But this order that it all happens in, you have to create habits. You can't just learn nothing. We create habits of ideas and we create habits of movement. But moving in slow motion is the basis of all of these disciplines, no matter what culture they come from, because moving in habit allows two really important things to happen. Moving in slow motion. You cannot engage habit. If I raise my hand in half a second, all those muscles, I'm going to raise my hand to all the way up the way I've done it for 20 years. But if I talk to you and raise my hand over like 30 seconds as we're talking, I cannot engage a habit. It's way too slow. And if I weren't talking to you, and instead, as I very, very slowly raise my arm, I were feeling, where's the most effort? Where's the least effort? What part of me feels delicious as I raise my hand? What part of me feels like it's working a lot? Then I'm giving my nervous system way more time as well. I can't do a habit because I'm moving so slow, and I'm elongating this period of analysis of what it feels like to move. What does it feel like in my knee? What does it feel like in my pelvis when I raise my one hand? My weight shifts, and all these things that you can notice by moving in very slow motion and moving your attention around the body. What does it really feel like in detail while I'm moving? This is what all these disciplines are doing all over the world for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, what this reminds me of is, at least in what I do, in fitness and in various other things. I do a multitude of things. In fact, I love that you brought up the idea of introspection, because in my book, The Awareness Shift, we talk a lot about introspection, and we talk a lot about shifting your awareness and ways to do that. And this sounds like a beautiful way to do so. And in terms of fitness training, one of the things that comes to mind is super slow method. And I remember when I implored the super slow method for myself and for a few clients, we noticed almost immediately the difference, right? Because you can sort of, like when you mentioned, you can train habit, right? So you can do things the way you've always done it. And I have this mantra that I say, our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what you do most of the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I would implore this idea of slowing down, like really slowing down the any sort of exercise, people immediately were like, whoa. Like, I mean, you could almost cut the weight in half, or the resistance in half. And this is also why I like to do isometrics, right? And of course, what you're doing is a lot different, because the idea is you're trying to challenge the nervous system in a way, to elicit a certain response. I love it. I think it's incredible, and I definitely want to hear more.
Well, this slowing down is really very important. In the West, we have had an obsession with clenching muscles and building six packs and building bulk, and we're surrounded by bodybuilding culture. Not all of us are doing it, but we're seeing it, and clench is the message in the West. And we're all stiff when we're old, and we're all have high blood pressure, and we all need to go to the chiropractor. And this is because we are building up habituated tension in our soft tissues on both sides of our skeleton. Stiffness is not because you're old. Old people who are becoming stiff are because they have habitually contracted muscles down the front of their body and habitually contracted muscles down the back of their body, pulling on each other, putting all that strain on their joints. You don't just get sublimations in your spine for nothing. You're getting sublimations in your spine because your back muscles, the muscles behind your spine and in front of your spine, are both permanently contracted and putting pressure on all of those joints going up, up the spine. That's why the sublimations are happening. So going to the chiropractor and having him relieve sublimations is all fine and dandy. But if you don't do something to overwrite that habituated permanent contraction, what we call parasitic tension, this does not relieve the pressure on your spine, and you're back to the chiropractor 30, 40, 50 times. And now we're talking about this American attitude of managing the symptoms as opposed to solving the problem. And this, I think the medical industry in general, there is no way other than muscle relaxers, but this is a temporary thing. There is no way to reduce what we call tonus, the amount of all the time chronically tense muscles. There's no way to do that through surgery or medication. The only thing that can turn those commands to contract off is training your nervous system, is moving in slow motion for the purpose of feeling more and more. That's what we call this comparative analysis, sensory comparative analysis. The nervous system learns by comparing. We can learn two ways. We can learn logic. We can learn 2 + 2 is 4. That's one way we learn. The other way we learn is the way an infant learns when they have no language, they have no ability. You learn what is easier and what is more difficult, what is warmer and what is cooler, what is brighter and what is darker, what is louder. It's comparing. We talk a lot about, for instance, if I were to put you inside a massive, bright, hot purple sphere, equally lit. When you went into the sphere and for the first couple minutes, you would see that it's hot purple. Well, but with no shadows, nothing else to look at but the wall of that sphere. Within about a half an hour, that sphere would look gray to you because your eyes would forget what purple is when there's nothing that's not purple to compare it to. This is the way our nervous system learns everything, by comparing something to something else. And physically, whether it's light, whether it's touch, whether it's smell, whatever. And so when we're trying to improve movement or reduce excess tonus, what we're fighting is a condition called sensory motor amnesia. It's a big $10 phrase that means your nervous system is not feeling these muscles as much as it used to, that for some reason they have clenched. Maybe it's from fear, from trauma, that you broke your right leg and now your left leg's been doing twice the work for 6 weeks. And now that you take the cast off, those muscles on the left leg don't unclench quite all the way because you have to take measures because they've habituated this extra work. They're under stress. Whatever the reason is, when a muscle clenches, it moves less. It's shortened, it's tough, it's not moving as much as it does when it's long. And over time, the nervous system can still sense that muscle, but it moves down. There's a hierarchy of attention in the nervous system. And there's really only, I think it's only about 16 what they call slots of attention. It's taking in thousands of pieces of data of what it's sensing all the time. But there's only about 16 of those slots where it will analyze and make a decision and change the way it's organizing movement. And everything else is below that, where it's noticing it, but not to the point where it's going to do anything about it. And that's why we get tension chronically in our musculature. There's a great experiment that I recommend people try just once. You set a timer for 3 minutes and you squeeze your fist and you keep reminding yourself every 5 seconds, no, harder, harder. No, keep going harder, harder. You watch it go down and you keep redoubling your effort. And at 3 minutes, you try to snap your fingers open in an instant. There's no way to do that. You'll barely open your hand. And if you do it for 10 minutes, you'd have to literally pry your fingers open.
Yeah.
This is what's happening all through your body as you keep something clenched too long. This is how bodybuilders build muscle. They're lifting, they're not relaxing, and then they're having to rip more muscle to lift the same amount of weight. And the muscles are getting larger because some of that muscle in the middle is not participating in the effort anymore. Muscle cells, I'm not going on and on, but this is interesting. Muscle cells are kind of like springs in a way. They have two positions, long and short. And each individual muscle cell, when it's long, is not costing any energy. It's almost like an electric spring. Like you must provide electricity and it will shorten. So it's almost like pressing a spring. You have to expend energy to shorten that spring. But unlike a spring, muscle cells cannot be partially squeezed. They have two positions, long and short. So the difference between picking up a piece of paper or picking up a 40-pound bag of rice is not how much you're squeezing all your muscle cells. It's how many muscle cells are being fully squeezed together in the difference between picking up something light and picking up something heavy. So the higher percentage of your muscle cells that are hard and squeezed and shortened all the time, the less percentage of long muscle cells you have left to perform the work.
Wow.
And what illustrated this to me was the very first Systema, this Russian martial art, the very first lesson I did. Again, I was feeling very weak and overweight and had been my whole life. And I said to the instructor, when we train, can we please focus on stomach strength? I'm very weak in my stomach. I can't even do a single sit-up. And he said, that's not possible that you can't do a single sit-up. It's not really that much work. And I said, no, it's really true. And he said, okay, please show me. And I was struggling. I couldn't get up, and I'm huffing and puffing and sweating and all this stuff. And he said, okay, I see. Can you stand up? And he felt my stomach, and he said, can we just try an experiment? We have a special kind of strike. It's called a therapeutic strike, and it invites muscle to relax. When I'm going to hit you a certain way, it'll invite the stomach to relax. So we did it, and he hit me, and it felt like my whole stomach dropped out of my body. And he said, try it again. And I whipped out 15 sit-ups with no problem. Boom, 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 boom. And he told me the story I just told you about the partially contracted muscles. And he said, lots of people who are overweight spend their whole life sucking their gut in. He said, your stomach is like a board under those layers of fat of being overweight. You've got this rocking six-pack. You have no muscle left to do a sit-up. I hit your stomach relaxes, and you see it's no big deal at all to do a sit-up. And this blew my mind and started me down this counterintuitive road of, for most people who are middle-aged, if you want to get stronger, you need to relax. You're already much stronger than you think you are. You're just only using a partial percentage of the muscle you have available to perform the work.
This is eye-opening for me. And, I've been at this for a long time. And in fact, when you were mentioning in the beginning, the Russian style, I knew immediately it's Systema, because the one of the guys, he's passed away now, but his name is Michael Moschel. He introduced me to this idea of, it was sort of like a Rolfing technique meets Systema, and he was doing some of this stuff with me. So I had a lot of experience with him doing all of that. And but I love the story. Well, two stories. I love the sit-up story, because that's a really good thing to draw a picture for everyone that's watching or listening. But the other one is just squeezing your hand. Like, that's a really, really good way for people to understand, like, oh, I get what he means. It's like, if you've done, I don't know, like, sometimes I ask people to do a hang, like a dead hang from a bar, just to kind of try to get some kind of decompression in the spine and whatever. And like, can you hold yourself up long enough, like for a minute or more? And usually what gives out first is the hands, right? The hands and the forearms. And every single time someone comes off of it, they go, I couldn't hold on. Like, and it takes a long time for them to open their hand. And that's just 1 minute. Yeah. Right. So I can really relate to what you mentioned. And I love that analogy. In fact, I think this is a really good segue, because we're about the time for a Pomodoro break. Could you offer something? I know you've explained the slow movement, and you've explained the fist clench, but is there something that you could offer to get people out of a sedentary state or this moment of monotony? What would you offer?
I would offer to do a little game we play where you can to do something in very slow motion, either a push-up or a sit-up or a squat. And as you do this, you breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, and you move. Like, say you were to do a 40-second squat from standing to sitting. Feel free to move your hips back, move them sideways, lean over, just keep, without stopping, just very, very, very slowly go down, 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 and feel, where am I doing too much work? How can I move my hips around to take that part that's getting tired out and give it a break, and have some other muscle do it as I'm still going down, down, down. You don't have to go all the way, and then you go up, 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 about 40 seconds. And when you feel the burn, try to move and have something else. Instead of just feeling the burn, feel other things too. Feel what's still on your body feels delicious. As it starts to burn, what about the side of your neck? That still feels nice. What about in between your toes? Don't let the discomfort take over your entire experience. Even when it's burning, there's parts that feel thriving. There's parts that feel easeful. There's parts that feel delicious, while other parts are feeling the burn. I would very highly recommend to use this opportunity to remember that the nervous system can focus on 3 general types of sensation. Discomfort, like you might have just felt where it's burning. Ease, where things feel neutrally easeful. And then pleasurable, where it's a more active sensation of that which feels delicious. And You can train entirely focused, and many people do train primarily focused on one of those three at a time. But no matter what you're doing, whether it's yoga or anything, you can just choose in a yoga class that I'm just going to focus on what feels delicious. I'm going to focus on what little part of my body feels kind of sexy right now. Now I'm going to focus on what's working too hard. Now I'm going to focus on what just feels so easy. What part of my body, as I do downward dog, just doesn't have to do anything. You can shift your focus between these three areas of sensation and get a lot more benefit out of your practice by doing it.
That is a true awareness shift, my friend. Most people who are only listening probably didn't get an opportunity to see me doing this as he was explaining it, right? And I just did one, very, very, very slow squat. You can kind of see my head disappear from the screen. And then I came up out of it. And it's so interesting. So I have to say, you've helped to shift my awareness just in doing one of those, right? Because the first thing I thought of, and I'm sure most other people who are doing this, first thing I thought of is like, whoa, my legs are starting to shake and burn. But when you mentioned, think about the things that feel good, it was like I immediately forgot about the burn, because I started to think about the things that feel good. And then I started to think about the things that feel great or, pleasurable. And I'm like, wow, that just shifted me out of that situation, because I feel like most of the clients that I work with, they're chasing that burn, and they're chasing that getting their heart rate up, and they're chasing the uncomfortable, because we've been shown that, as a society, that in order to look better and feel better, you've got to be in pain, and you've got to, have your heart rate up, and it's got to suck for a moment, and then it feels better later. But it sounds like what you're saying is we can choose what to focus on. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. The discomfort has a tendency to jump to the front of our attention. And we live in this culture of feel the burn, feel the burn. And what, as a somatic educator, I would say feeling the burn is certainly part of health. But there's a lot more to feel. And there's better things to feel than the burn. Everybody, just mentioning feeling the burn is great, but there's other things that you can also feel, and not just separately. You can simultaneously feel these other things while the burn's happening, because for many people who are in pain of any kind, even when they're not exercising to induce the pain, the idea of training to feel more and more and more may sound crazy to you. You might have been in a car accident. Who knows? You have chronic pain of some kind, and someone recommending you feel more might sound like the craziest thing you ever heard of. Why would I want to feel more? Most addictions in the world are people trying to either numb themselves from pain or distract themselves from pain. Whether it's emotional pain or physical, doesn't really matter. Your nervous system doesn't care which kind of pain it is. It reacts exactly the same. This is well proven by science. Nearly the same, pretty much the same. So one of the first things we do is try to get people to be aware that there's simultaneous things happening. And the more you learn to feel in detail, like a microscope in one spot on your body, and then the other kind of feeling more is a more total feeling of the connected, I call it the meat of yourself, like the soft tissue of yourself. Those two types of focus, what they wind up doing, when you learn to feel profoundly more, not a little bit more, but a lot more, your pain becomes less a total part of your experience. And relaxing the soft tissue does reduce a lot of types of pain as well, in addition to that. But whether or not that happens or not, because if you have emotional pain, that may not be the case. But that pain becomes less a total part of what you're feeling and experiencing when you learn to physically feel magnitudes more. Now your pain is not 80% of your experience. Now it's 30% of your experience, or 20% or 10%, because you're feeling all kinds of other things at the same time. And that skill you just took a little peek into is really what brings these profound transformational benefits to people is that even when there's an issue that's not going to go away, I'm in a wheelchair, my back got crushed in an accident and my nerve is on fire, whatever the reason is, when you reduce how much of your total experience of being alive that nasty sensation is, and the more other stuff you can simultaneously monitor, the richer your life's going to become, even if you feel trapped by your pain, even if you feel that you're listening right now and you have a kind of pain that odds are it's going to be with you for a while. Reducing the tonus in your overall body and training your nervous system to focus on things other than that pain will bring massive benefits to your life.
Well said. Yeah, I'm going to share your website. So for those that are listening and watching, I'm going to Somatic Training Network.
Where you want to go is somaticlab.live. That is really our training platform. This is our corporate platform, Somatic Training Network. This tells a story of the corporation, but you can go to painworkswithanx.com, wellworkswithanx.com, or somaticlab.live. And this is where we've created this world that all somatic disciplines are welcome under one roof. And we've really become kind of like a matchmaking company to help you find the kind of training that's appropriate for what's going on in your life and the kind of challenges you're facing. And we have a lot of instructors, a lot of disciplines, breathing disciplines, movement disciplines, and all kinds of trauma recovery disciplines. And from the point of view of training your nervous system toward wellness, and we let every discipline under the sun present our sites organized by knee pain, neck pain, hip pain, whatever your situation is. You'll see there's a lot of organization. And then we invite all the disciplines and instructors to, what would your approach to somebody's knee pain be? Systema instructor. What would your approach be? Yoga instructor. What would your approach be? Qigong instructor. And everyone is welcome. So it's a great place to find disciplines that mean something to you and you enjoy doing. And it's a great place to poke around and see what different people are doing for the stuff that are your challenges and your interests.
Yeah, as I'm navigating while you're speaking, I'm looking at I'm on the Painworks portion of the site and BreathWorks, and I see there's a lot of information that people can sift through. I think this is wonderful. You have it broken down from beginner to intermediate to advanced, and it looks like it's just kind of all here. And then I guess you guys have a live component as well, live classes, which is cool. And then you have a list of the instructors. I think it's really, really cool. If we haven't piqued people's interest enough so far, I don't know what's going to do that. But yeah, this is really cool.
Oh, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky to be working really with top instructors in the world in all the disciplines, and they have had a kind of lonely time of it, other than yoga, which is everyday knowledge for most people. All the rest of these somatic disciplines are still in the realm of, from Main Street USA's perspective, kind of obscure, little known. They're all operating independently and trying to catch people's attention. And what I decided to do was try to make a company that creates conversations, that leads people toward this arena of training by talking to them about and creating sub-brands that speak to their challenges specifically. Like, we don't advertise somaticlab.live, that's where the training is, but we advertise with painworks.com, and we speak to people in pain and lead them there through messaging that means something to them. They're still all going to this place where the yoga people are going to offer their solutions and the Systema people are going to offer their solutions, because on our site, we only offer martial arts as wellness practices. We don't have martial arts training, but many martial arts have exercises and training that they do specifically for wellness by training the nervous system. And those types of exercises, we welcome all the martial arts to contribute as well, but within an arena of wellness only. No fighting and that, but this has been my vision, is having a one-stop shop where all the disciplines are a community of disciplines, all presenting their solutions their way, but where we keep the culture of origin to second. And the first way we approach people is talking to them about them and making them understand that training their nervous system really offers completely natural, drug-free, surgery-free, bad side effect-free way to overcome hundreds and hundreds of physical and emotional problems, all through training to use your own natural capacity built into you. You're learning to play you as a musical instrument greater and greater and greater by improving. The nervous system is kind of like your operating system, like on a computer. So it is in some ways a kind of like nutrition is also in its way a one-stop shop toward health. Training your nervous system improves so many factors of your life because you're improving your ability to take in sensory information and organize movement. That's the basic two things your nervous system does. And by improving those two things, everything you're engaged in improves.
Right. Right. Wow. Yeah, it's really cool. And I love to hear when people explain their vision, and when we get a chance as the people kind of on the outside, we get a chance to see this come to fruition. And I think it's amazing. And something else I want to share is your book, because Somatic Fanatic is amazing. All of your content is very well done. So kudos to you and your team.
Thanks very much.
So here's the book. So I'm at somaticfanatic.com. Mm-hmm. And I see there's a little intro video here, and then it talks about nervous system training. So that obviously explains somatic training. There's the book. And
the audio book is read by me, and I think it's still only $1. I think we're just trying to get it out there, and it's $1 for the audio book. It's fast. It really reads, or you can listen to it. It really reads more like a book than a how-to book, and it's the story of my 7-year journey. It was written a couple of years ago, from midlife crisis through new life mission, and decision to go back into business again when I had the choice to never do that again. If I were a fisherman or a poet, I'd be sitting under a tree and I would never start a business again. But I'm a filmmaker at heart, and I came to a conclusion many years ago that I found myself involved in the most serious and beneficial and like inspirational work I'd ever done before. And I decided I was thinking of making a series about these people who are doing all this kind of work. And I just suddenly realized I'm professionalizing myself in all these disciplines, I think, as this like producer who wants to understand so I can make a series about it. And through a lot of adventures in this book, it shows the transformation in my thinking, led by the suggestions of many masters around the world that who said to me, Dan, you're not just a journalist. I don't think you realize that your sensitivity and physical sensitivity is extraordinary, and you should maybe take being involved in our world more seriously than just talking about what we're doing. And slowly over the course of years, it gave me this vision to go back into business and use my skills as a communicator and filmmaker and musician and every trick I have in the book, instead of toward entertainment, to aim that set of skills toward this mission of making nervous system training everyday knowledge around the world, and promote this idea that active things you can do toward health are nutrition, strength training, and training your nervous system on a regular basis. And now we have a new company that is a sister company to Somatic Training Network that maybe I'll come back in a little while and talk to you about, called Touch Positive. And what we've done for movement-based training, we have a new website that's going to come up in 2023 called Touch Positive, and this will be a one-stop shop for nervous system training for social touch of all kinds. Everything from caregiver touch to better massage, all the way through sensual and erotic touch, all based on a system called somatic consent to begin with, where we study consent rules, and not just rules, but you feel in your body why these consent rules exist and what your limits are, and how to know what you really want in touch, and get more comfortable asking for it, how to feel your limits and get more comfortable saying no, and most especially opening up your capacity to feel what we call neurologically direct pleasure. Up to 50% of adults cannot feel neurologically direct pleasure through their hands. Even though we're feeling stuff in our hands all the time, they wind up becoming utilitarian tools, and often we get into a habit that when we're touching another person, it's always for that other person's benefit, the massage kind of mentality. And we lose the capacity to touch someone or something and feel the pleasure of touching them with our hands. And this is up to 50% of people. It's a little known but major problem in the world of people shut off from the capacity to focus on pleasure. You got a little taste of it just with that little squat. It's so easy to not focus on pleasure. And we have a new site that is completely devoted to the long-term study of advanced touch skills. My feeling is the world presents us in the world of martial arts and sports hundreds and hundreds of systems where you can study for many years to touch someone else for the purpose of combat or competition. And we want Touch Positive to be offering the world a place where you can study advanced touch for many years toward the social, toward the life affirming energy. And this is the expansion of what we've already started, and we're excited next year we're going to bring that online as well.
It's incredible. You know, when you started talking about the Touch Positive, I wanted to see if it was up, and it looks like it's up here.
There might be some stuff up, but
right.
Believe me, the real thing is yet to come.
Right. Which again, I love it. I love the evolution of things, right? And what this reminded me of, and obviously you were talking through it, and you're very clear about everything you're talking about, which I love. One of the first things that came to mind was, I'm not sure if you've seen it or heard about it, but there's this show on Netflix called Principles of Pleasure. And I remember watching that, and it's obviously geared towards females, but I think it's also very much geared towards males. If you're the type of person, a male that is interested in learning more about everyone, right? Being inclusive instead of exclusive. And kind of the very beginning of that just talked about like this stigma around experiencing pleasure within females. And obviously the bulk of it is sexual pleasure or sensual pleasure or whatever. But what about just everyday regular pleasure? Like, we should be more in tune with understanding that it's okay to talk about pleasure, right? And feel it.
It's not just okay. In Western culture, we've kind of lost sight of the fact that pleasure is not just a cherry on the cake of life. You know, pleasure is a survival mechanism. Not just a procreative mechanism, but it is a survival mechanism. We are all living lives full of pressure, worry, fear, disappointment, responsibility, feeling stuck in situations that have gotten beyond us, frustration, worry, mourning, trauma. We're dealing with all of this all of the time. Pleasure gives us a capacity to go on. It gets us from healing back to thoughts of thriving again. You know, so many people who study healing arts that are only in the gentle arts, and so many people I meet who don't cross train in the world of the martial, and they're only in the world of gentle arts. It can get so kind of, they focus on ease, but not pleasure. And even when they focus on pleasure, it can be so shrouded in the transformational spirituality of it all that they forget about the let's go out and party. Let's have a picnic. The lightness and the fun and the play of pleasure. Pleasure can be tussling around with a puppy in your backyard. Pleasure can be feeling the sun on your face. Pleasure can be cooking together with friends you haven't seen in a long time, and it's just the right music and just the right thing, and you take the time to just say, wow, this is so sweet. It's situational pleasure. It's physical pleasure in hugging your grandma and helping your neighbor across the street and just feeling how delicious it is to just touch your neighbor in a friendly way. We in the West and in our Me Too generation have become so paranoid of touch in the West that it's sort of you touch your lover or your kids and nobody else. Or the jujitsu guy who's trying to choke you out and you're tapping out. Like, that's the only other kind of touch people get is competitive touch or sexual touch or touching their kids. And there's no other social touch. And this is very, very, very bad for health.
Yeah, this was definitely highlighted throughout this pandemic or lockdown or whatever you want to call it. I think it was very much highlighted because we are social creatures, right? At the end of the day, and I really love, especially like as an African American man in America, I really love trying to feel through this experience of hugging other men when we say hi, when we say goodbye, saying I love you, right? Like, these are the things that are kind of like teased out as we're growing up. You know, we're kind of taught like, oh, don't cry, you know, toughen up, don't do this, don't do that. And it's a lot of like suppressing pleasure throughout most of our lives. And it's not just African American men, obviously, but like in my experience, I can speak about my experience.
Yeah.
I was never encouraged to hug my brother or hug my father or hug, you know, anyone really, you know. And it's kind of sad, but I'm glad that there's people like you and people like myself that are out there trying to promote more of this sense of connection.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you're saying. You know, I'm developing a course right now. We're going to shoot in February called Lover's Touch. And it's about using what we call tensegrity of the myofascial meridians, using these lines of feeling up and down the body to indirectly touch people. And one of the early classes in the early modules that we've been laying out is this class on hugging. Just this most basic of, what would you say, really connective touch is a hug. And most people are clueless at how rich hugging can be toward all kind. You can communicate so many things. We're working on this thing right now where I'm talking about the language of touch and within hugging and giving demonstrations of how different hugs literally say things. And we're going to spell out, this hug says this sentence to you. This type of touch, it's saying these words to you. And you can feel it. And I feel in your system that you just heard what I'm saying. And we're trying to promote this, that of course you have to ask people things. You have to ask permissions. You have to do all this. But once you're in what we call the apex, we start training by walking people through these various conversations, even when they're difficult, giving them, like martial arts. If it's hard for people to ask for the kind of touch they want, there's all kinds of reasons. This is very difficult. Like martial arts, we set up these little games where you can do that in a relatively safe container to try it out. It might be really scary for you to say, would you please hug me? Would you please rub my neck? Would you please, you know, whatever. And like martial arts, what our instructor, Matthias Schwentek from Germany, developed is this training system that's social arts, social touch arts, one step at a time, breaking the components of social interaction apart so you can try each one, just like martial arts, and then you mix them back together and you have a better sense of how you can function and where your limits are. And wow, it is difficult for me to ask. It was difficult for me to ask that person to touch my knee. That's strange. I did it like the last time, and I asked another person, it didn't, you know, so really coming to terms with the reality of how complex all these things are is what the beginning level, our quote unquote white belt level, would be in breaking apart and really getting not just a little better at social touch, but fundamentally better, the way you would go to a Shaolin temple to become a Kung Fu master. Touch Positive, we're going to set up this same thing where you can study for years with lots and lots of masters to radically improve your ability to receive and share touch as a gift.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you mentioned white belt, because I was going to ask you, do you have like a ranking system like most martial arts have, or is it more, you just are forever training, right? Like, how does that
Yeah,
work?
we don't because I'm influenced by the Sistema discipline, which does not have a ranking system.
Exactly.
In Sistema training culture, you switch partners and you switch partners and you switch partners, and you can be training next to someone who's been 20 years, and then 10 minutes later you switch partners and you're two people fresh off the street, and then you go to the next person and the next person. So there's a non-competitive culture in Sistema where you are helping each other to learn. And of course there is competition, but it has a very different flavor, and all training starts in slow motion. And then over the course of a class, basically first you start by exhausting yourself. So you have no strength left, and then the class begins, because they want you to feel and move and not count on muscles. They want you to count on your nervous system to interact. So we've borrowed a lot from that training culture. It's very inclusive. Women respond to it much more than Ich ni sun chi, like, counting off reps and 50 people doing exactly the same thing. Sistema culture is nothing like that at all. It's much more like a community. It's much more supportive, and yet it's a deadly martial art. It's a military art. It's a no nonsense art. It's not a sport. We don't train to fight full out when a bell rings. We do just as much studying about that period of time when a fight might happen. If you go to most sports fighting, there's no serious amount of your training time being devoted to when a fight might happen. In Sistema, I'd say almost 30% of your training is spent, how do you negotiate this situation where there's a fight bubbling up? How do you deceive? How do you diffuse? How do you calm down? How do you tell a little story so their attention goes bink and boom and oop? As we say with the women, I say in Sistema, what we're trying to do is create a series of misunderstandings. Because in Sistema, they have a saying that they say, if you're big, you may be strong. I don't want to find out. I want to trick you, get safe, and get the hell out of there as close to instantly as possible. Because it's a soldier's philosophy. So they feel every second a fight continues doubles my chance of being dead. So it's very fast. There's no 45-second Sistema fights. It's not happening. These guys are going to put you out quick.
Yeah, you're painting a very beautiful picture. And of course, like the human mind always wants to label things and put things in a box and things like that. But what comes up for me is it's very similar. Obviously there's some differences, but what comes to mind is BJJ, right? Mm. And that, BJJ is unlike some of the disciplines that I practice, like Taekwondo or, Kempo or, Goju-Ryu, in which you get your belt after you test out, you learn this much information and you test out. Whereas, like, for instance, in BJJ, it takes much longer to get to, that top rank. And a lot of times when you see a person that has a certain amount of rank, I don't think, oh, that person knows this. I think, oh, this person's been here for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. That's usually what I see from that. And then also when people ask me, like, especially females, if they ask me, hey, what should I get into? I'm looking to get healthier or to change up what I'm doing. I almost always say, try out BJJ, especially for females, because this is one of those things where if you were to get encountered by someone, chances are you're going to be encountered by someone that's bigger and stronger than you. How can you best defend yourself from a disadvantaged position? And that's the part I love about BJJ. But of course, there are some things that, like, what you just spelled out, which may make it different. But I think anyone listening to this should definitely check out what you're doing, because you're onto something for sure. This is cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So with everything that you've kind of spelled out and we've talked through today, are there some things that we didn't get a chance to touch on before we go into our last questions?
I think that we have. I think the main message I want to get out there is that we are all carrying an immense amount of chronically tense musculature, even if you don't realize it. If you're, say, maybe if you're 22 years old, you're not, but if you're 30 or older, the amount of permanently contracted muscles you have in by your bones is way more than you realize it is, way more. And everything comes to feel normal. No matter how unnormal it is, it eventually becomes to feel normal, and you have a natural capacity to undo this tension. To do it profoundly, you do have to face some pain. You have to face some kind of deep tissue body work while you're moving, and other things, but you can take measures even in the gentle world to reduce this, what we call excess tonus, chronic contraction of muscles. This will give you more strength. It will give you more speed. It will give you more ease. It will lower your blood pressure. It will take pressure off your hurting back. It will reduce inflammation at the joints because they're not grinding on each other. It will calm you down emotionally. So please find some means, some way that you enjoy moving in very slow motion on a regular basis, and roll that into your self-care schedule. And no matter what discipline it is, yoga, this one, it doesn't have to be a discipline. You can just make it up. If you just move very slowly, if you want, like me, you're a maverick, you don't want some kind of system, just move extremely slowly in ways you never moved before. And tomorrow, just say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to move very slowly in some weird way I never moved before. I'm going to turn my head away. I'm going to tilt. I'm going to rotate my arm in some bizarre thing very, very slowly, just to feel. And I'm going to do it a couple times. I'm not going to count reps, because if I count reps, now I'm in the world of logic. I'm going to feel what it feels like to move in this bizarre way. And your nervous system is going to learn some stuff. And you do that 2-3 days in a row, you're going to already feel these benefits. And this is universal truth that does not require faith. You don't have to believe it. Just move in slow motion and see what you feel. And there's no question you will feel better, because that's the mechanism that nature has provided you to increase the function of your nervous system, is very slow motion movement.
Slow down to relax. Right? Yeah, it's profound. This is great. Okay, so I ask a couple questions at the end of the show for every guest. And the first question is, what are your top 2 pet peeves?
This is easy for me. In my world, my top 2 pet peeves are, the number one, without any question, is people with sore backs. Anybody out there with a sore back? My number one pet peeve is trainers and physicians alike saying that the solution to a sore back is to, quote, strengthen your core. This is nonsense. And anyone who's done this knows it's nonsense, because when you do back exercises and core exercises to strengthen your core with a sore back, your back hurts more, everybody. And you want to know why? The same stomach story I told you. Your back hurts because you have chronically engaged muscles in your back. Lifting weights with your back and making them clench more will not make your back pain go away. Releasing those muscles will make your back pain go away. Get to a yoga course, get to a Tai Chi class, get to a Feldenkrais class, get to a Hana Somatics class. Disengage those muscles. Forget this strengthen your core for back pain is nonsense. And I know it's what everyone hears from millions of very learned people. It's a very strange thing for me how many absolute people say believe the science, believe the doctors, believe the trainers. It's true, sort of, but when it comes to the reality of pain induced by chronically tight tissue, all of these people are somehow oblivious to this basic reality that the tense muscles are causing the pain, everybody. This is what's causing the pain. Strengthening chronically tense muscles will not reduce pain ever. So that's my number one pet peeve, no question about it.
It's a good one.
And then I would say my other pet peeve is shoes. I've got a major problem with shoes. And some people live in climates like it's getting very cold here. It's very hot in a lot of places but get out early. I'm a huge proponent. I usually, when weather permits, I walk at least 2 miles a day barefoot in urban environment, in any environment. At least once a month, I go on a multi-hour mountain climbing hike barefoot. Get your shoes off. We are not supposed to be walking in shoes, everybody. Walking barefoot, do it as slow as you need to. Don't bring your shoes with you. I usually pop them in a little sports bag. I put a little light pair of shoes just in case. Walk on uneven ground. Walk on rocks. Walk barefoot everywhere. It makes you bend your knees. It makes you soften your structure. Mm-hmm. It makes you walk the way we're supposed to walk, because shoes are like mats on a floor in martial arts. The Russians say mats on a floor are a good friend who doesn't always tell you what you need to hear. A wooden floor is a friend who always tells you the truth. And barefoot walking is the same thing. Barefoot walking tells you the truth of how you're walking. So I would say shoes are my number 2 pet peeve. Get rid of them.
I'm with you on that. I maybe would have said like conventional shoes, because nowadays there's a lot of technology out there. I've been a barefoot proponent for well over a decade, and I do a lot of work with the company Vivo Barefoot. Mm-hmm. And there's a few other companies that are doing good things, and obviously preferably you go completely barefoot, especially when we're in home.
You can't always, like hot weather and cold weather, it's not always feasible, but when possible, because there's also the grounding that happens, and exactly. So many of us we're in our cars or our homes and in shoes, and we're not there's literally all kinds of electric and magnetic waves in our body, and literally grounding in the electrical sense of it on a regular basis is great for health and reducing inflammation and all kinds of things, as well as the structural things I mentioned before. But barefoot is an amazing tool available that almost nobody does. It's incredible to me how very, very few people walk barefoot on a regular basis.
Well said. Those were 2 very, very good ones. Probably 2 of the best, I think, so far on this show. So thank you for sharing that. The last one is by far my favorite question because of what comes out with every guest that I ask this question to. And it's also a reminder for people listening and watching to practice gratitude. But what are you most grateful for?
For me, I am most grateful to right now in this moment. I am really feeling grateful to a particular friend of mine who about 5 years ago pointed me in a direction that wound up having me go back to school to learn in this modern 21st century way of flying to the world's best to train directly with people instead of looking for some university to learn from a professor who read a book that was written 20 years ago by some guy who was the top of his game then, but who reminded me that we now live in the 21st century where for so many things, you can be educated by the best in the world just by signing up for an online program, hopping on a plane and going to a 3-day or 5-day seminar, that you can be highly educated without ever stepping foot on a university campus, no matter what age you are. I am very grateful for the moment I'm living in where I can train at such a high level in so many things that have been important to my personal development and have allowed this mission to perpetuate and allowed me to finally draw in this amazing I feel so grateful to the top masters at the heads of the disciplines we're involved in who have all felt so enthusiastic about what we're trying to do here. It really is. It's a big thing to approach a master who's devoted their life to a practice, who is used to being the head person in their world, and asking them to please become one of a community of equals and to project this, what we all need, a mutual respect. Even though this is our culture, I'm the whatever team, but I want to go to eat dinner at the potluck and eat what you brought from your thing. And wow, that's tasty. And this curious neighborliness of finding what you love, but being respectfully curious about what your neighbors are up to. That I'm so grateful I've wound up in the middle of a community of people who are all open to this, because it does take something. It does take something to recognize that whatever my home culture is, it's not the culture, it's a culture, and among equals. And this, and being now involved in a mission and a business where I'm surrounded by dozens of people who really have accepted this this philosophy, I feel very grateful for. I feel this philosophy is the only hope we've got in this world of nasty tools that can blow up cities and all the rest of it. Respectful curiosity about what your neighbors are up to are the only choice we've got. And I'm so grateful I'm in a situation where I go to work every day surrounded by people with that attitude.
Deep, very deep. All right, Mr. Dan Sykes, how can people best keep in touch with you, and maybe rattle off all the websites, the book, and the social media?
I would say Somatic Fanatic, #1. That's going to get you in. Get the book. You'll have another couple hours of hearing me tell this story of meeting all these amazing people in a nice way, and this will lead you in. This will lead you into our world. So I highly recommend taking some time, get the audiobook. It's $1 or something like this. Get the hardcover if you want to, no problem.
Yeah.
But I think it's a nice, easy listen. It's entertaining, and you're going to, I'm reliving this process that got me from miserable, lost, and so happy I never had to do business again and never work again, all the way through excited, energized, transformed, and determined to put my money and my time where my mouth is and develop this network and this company that I hope is going to bring nervous system training to millions of people all over the world. And I'm excited to be in this position. I'm excited for the story that's in Somatic Fanatic, and I think you'll enjoy it, and it might give you some great ideas of how you can take your wellness into your own hands through training your nervous system on a regular basis.
And I see here Somatic Fanatic on Instagram,
Facebook, and I think if we're not Somatic Fanatic in the coming year will also be a YouTube series, just much like my emergency fish party was, where the worlds of nervous system training instructors in the martial world and in the social, sensual, and sexual touch world all come together. I know lots of people that each know ways of making people out of their comfort zone and having the martial artists meet the sexologists is a very interesting world we have going on here. And we're going to tie all that together with music and performing arts and train performing artists and musicians in these disciplines and share that all with you in an entertaining way. So next year, Somatic Fanatic becomes a YouTube channel as well. Start with the book, and there's a whole lot of fun and playfulness and nervous system training of all types coming at you in that world of Somatic Fanatic.
Amazing. All right. Well, to all the listeners and the viewers, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Some of the main takeaways I got from this wonderful conversation with Dan Sykes is that we just simply need to slow down to relax and therefore be more in touch with our true strength and awareness. And yeah, I look forward to diving into Somatic Fanatic. And, you know, if you want to find out more or get in touch with Dan, feel free to do so. I will link everything in the description and the bio, or reach out to me. And yeah, hopefully we can get Dan back on for another iteration of our chat. And, you know, make sure to move slow, everyone. So this is Josh signing out with Simply Walk the Talk. Peace.
Simply walk the talk. Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.